Hello again, this is North Star Runner. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about diet. Um, I'm not a nutritionist, nor am I a doctor, so the recommendations that I'm going to give today are based upon my own experience as a runner and don't constitute medical advice. I often hear people state that you cannot outrun a bad diet. This has been a frequently occurring topic on running forums, magazines, Runner's World, YouTube, and a number of running books. It tends to be a somewhat of a polarizing topic. Most people state emphatically either one way or the other, rarely weighing out both viewpoints and offering their personal opinions on this subject. From my reading, I found that most people tend to land on the you can't outrun a bad diet side of that fence. I found that this is far too simplistic of a viewpoint. Like anything else in running, you must take stock of your goals and prioritize what's important to you as an individual runner. I've had long training periods where I had a strict diet focusing on increasing mileage with a small but daily net caloric deficit. Prior to qualifying for Boston, I followed that approach. Starting about a year or so, right around a year prior to my qualifying run. Using that approach and training using Hal Higdon's Advanced 2 program, I was able to drop about 35 pounds. At about 6 weeks prior to the race, I stopped that caloric deficit, but I still ensured that my net calories remained at zero, so that's not regain any of the weight that I had lost. But I wanted to get closer to that net 0 point to just peak out my conditioning prior to that race. The focus on this approach was to improve my marathon PR by about 7 minutes or so, or more, in order to qualify for Boston. That worked. I was able to qualify. And I'm convinced that had I not taken that disciplined approach to diet and training, I wouldn't have hit that goal. There are other periods, such as right now, that I'm kind of in between training cycles. I like to eat, and honestly, I do like to eat junk food, like most people. I take this time in between training cycles to kind of partake in this a little bit more so than I otherwise would, sometimes a lot more so. And then I move into a more disciplined approach during my actual training cycles. I find during this time that if my weight increases or my running performance decreases, I can either increase my training or improve my diet. During the off season, I do not have to do both. And especially during the holidays, I'll increase my running volume a bit more in order to offset the extra calories that I'm consuming during that time period. In short, I outrun a poor diet. I do so knowing that I'm not striving for peak performance at that time, and knowing that it's not a priority for me to do so right now. Usually after the holiday season, I switch to a more focused approach so that I can reach peak performance near Grandma's Marathon, which is typically held in mid-June. While I know that keeping a more disciplined approach for a longer period, maybe a year or more, may further improve my race results, I find that just the burnout factor becomes an issue, and prefer to take a bit of a break kind of in between cycles so that I just take that break on the diet, more so than on the training volume. There may be a time that in the future that I decide that improved performance would outweigh the risk of that burnout risk, and therefore take a more disciplined approach for maybe an entire year or even more. But at this point, my goal of qualifying for Boston doesn't appear to need this approach. I think I can achieve that without that long of a strict performance-based diet and training schedule. So whether or not you can outrun a poor diet is a decision only you can make. Unlike most videos or articles on this topic, I feel it's entirely up to the individual. You need to take a look at your personal goals and past performances in order to determine if a disciplined diet is something that you want to add to your training plan or that you need to add to your training plan. I know plenty of long-term runners that simply run to eat, and they just don't give much thought to their nutrition outside of maybe running an extra mile or two if they overindulge on a particular day. These folks primarily run for fun and camaraderie rather than striving for any aggressive time goals. I find that those folks are typically just as happy and just as motivated as the runners that I know who are constantly striving for their next PR. Bottom line, you just have to weigh out what's important to you and just go out and run. So again, please hit that like button. Consider subscribing to this channel for more running tips, tricks, reviews, and motivational thoughts. And as always, thank you.